This is the Seller Process Podcast, where we talk about the best systems, processes, and SOPs for your Amazon business so that you can regain control of your time, build up your team, and scale your e-com empire.
Hello, entrepreneurs. If you are serious about building your brand on Amazon and you understand how important it is to have perfectly optimized listings to increase the conversion rates of your product pages and crush the competition, then this episode is for you. Our guest today will share with us a listing analysis process that will empower us to easily identify current market gaps and weak spots in our listing so that we can improve it and make it rank to page one. I'm talking about our marketing expert, Emma Schermer Tamir. She's the co-founder and CEO of Marketing by Emma. She has helped over 1,000 businesses from around the world boost their sales and build their brands online. Through her thoughtful process and winning strategies, Emma has become a leading expert in the field of selling on Amazon. Whether she's speaking on stages across the globe, leading her team, or working with clients, her goal is to empower everyone to create better product pages, Amazon listings, and website copy that makes brands' dream customers excited to click add to cart. Hey, Emma, how are you doing? Excited to have you here.
I'm really excited to be here and talk with you today. I'm a huge fan of processes and systems. And so I feel like this is the perfect combination. Like it's something that I bring to every single thing that we do with our own business or with clients. So really excited to dig in today.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. You are in the right place because we're all about systems, processes, and SOPs. And I have to say, like all the big sellers or experts that I talk to, I mean, they are all very big on process and systems because everybody understands that that's the foundation to grow any business. So I'm glad that you're also in the group with us. Awesome. So you know that we like to go straight to the point, no chit chat. So let's talk about the analysis process that you have developed. So let's start by getting a high level overview of the 6 steps that you developed in this process, and then we will dive deeper into each one separately.
Perfect. So really the whole goal of this process is for people to be able to, whether it's a listing that's already live, or maybe you're even assessing whether you should launch a new product, and you can follow a lot of these same processes to identify whether there might be opportunities there. So you can apply this to your own listing, but you can also apply this to competitors' listings to see, oh, okay, there really might be something here that if I can do X, Y, and Z really well, then I'll be able to differentiate myself meaningfully, come across more professional, and really get people eager to purchase me over the competitor, even if they might have far more reviews than what I would have starting off. So this process is really walking you through the listing itself. But before you get into that, looking at the competitive landscape. So really considering how this product is going to fit into everything, not just on the page itself. And I think that's one of the key areas where a lot of people overlook and get stuck. They just go right to the listing without considering everything from what's happening in the broader sense of that space, even outside of Amazon, but also even within Amazon when you're searching a term and then finding yourself on the search results page. What all are you seeing there? And how are you going to relate to the various other products that are on page one? And so that's step one. And then from there, it's really getting very granular to every single piece of the listing. So from the title to the bullets, the A+ content and product description, the photos, and then really that last bit that's so very important of branding as well. So how can you consider all of these things on a strategic level and then take it to the next kind of competitive space where you're developing something more than just a product page, but a brand that is going to give substance to really make people feel excited and want to buy your products, not just because it's the cheapest or has the higher reviews, but because there's something about that they really connect with.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. So I'm excited to start to diving deeper into each step. So step one is about competition. So I like how you framed it, so that people should look at how the listings fit in the overall market. So not just looking at competitors' listings. So let's talk more about that, and let's dive deeper into this step one.
Sure. So the first thing is to choose your target keyword. So what is the keyword that is super highly relevant that you understand that you're going to want to be going after and ranking highly for, and search it on Amazon and see what results are coming up, what other listings are on that page, what are the types of details that people are including in their titles and in their images, and really starting to think critically, not just from what you're seeing, but putting yourself into the mindset of a customer. So if you're searching that term, what are you hoping to see? What are the different elements that would make you want to click into a product page? And where would you click if you were shopping for this? And so all of those types of details are going to start to give a sense of how the customer is engaging with all of the options out there, and then figuring out what you can do to make sure that people are going to want to click into your page. Because ultimately, if you don't figure out this piece, none of the other stuff really matters, because that all assumes that someone's clicked into your page. But if you can't even get somebody into your page, then all of this effort is not going to pay off in the same way that it could. So that's why this step is so incredibly critical. So looking for the opportunities, and really then starting to also dive into the listings of each of your competitors. And your top competitors may not always be ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Your top competitors might also be someone that's a little bit farther down, but is maybe a more comparable type of product. So something that's, has this special tweak that you have that the top 3 or 4 don't have. So you want to make sure that you're considering all of those different factors. Something else that can be helpful is to consider if there are other products that are not a direct competition, and that they're the exact same thing, but that they're categorically serving the same problem. So something like a popcorn popper. So there are all different types of popcorn poppers, and some people know that they want a microwavable popcorn popper, but another alternative to that would be like a plug-in air popper, or something that is a stovetop popcorn popper. And so categorically, they are competitors, even if they're not directly competing for that particular type of product. And you want to be aware of what they're doing as well, because maybe they're doing something super duper well, or there are complaints that customers have about one of those types of designs that you can really then hone in on as a selling point for your own product.
Okay, awesome. These are great tips, and so that's a great starting point. And by the way, one thing I'd like to mention here is that we're giving for granted that you already know who your customer avatar is. Okay, so that these are like 6 steps that comes after you have very clear who your customer avatar is. Okay, so everything that Emma is sharing right now, it's based on a great understanding of your brand's customer avatar. Okay, so keeping that in mind, obviously we cannot talk much about that because it would be like the topic of one separate episode, but keep that in mind. So if you haven't done that work yet, so before to dive into these 6 steps, make sure you know who your customer avatar is. All right, so then together now with Emma, we can go to the next steps. So the following steps were about the copy, the listing copy, right? Analyzing the title and the bullet point. So what are the questions that we should ask ourselves to improve them? What are your tips on that?
Sure. Yeah. So in addition to wanting to make sure that you've done that customer avatar work, this is also making an assumption that you've done at least some preliminary keyword research, because that's going to help inform the eye that you take, especially for this next step, which is the title. And the title is one of those places where I feel like the battle between keywords and content is most fierce, because you have a really small space that needs to do a lot of things. And so it's so easy to kind of fall into one side or the other without really achieving a balance that successfully accomplishes your SEO goals while still clearly communicating what the product is to the customer. That title serves as sort of like a sign on your door. So that's the place where when somebody is looking at the search results page, yes, they see the photo, yes, they see the price and the reviews, but the title is also that piece that's helping reinforce this is what you're looking for. So if you click in, you're not going to be wasting your time. This product has a high likelihood of matching what you're wanting to buy today. And so you need to be thoughtful about that. And make sure that all of that need to know information is in there, but it's also in there in a hierarchical sense, because a lot of times, whether somebody's on mobile or on desktop, the title is getting truncated or shortened. So you'll see the ellipsis, the ... and that full 200 characters might not be visible. And so considering that in mind as well, and making sure that the most critical information is towards the beginning of the title, so that even if it's shortened, people will have a good, strong sense of what your product is. So considering, is there a good balance of keywords? And a lot of times, one of the easiest sort of rules of thumbs for that is a lot of times your highest value keywords are going to be microwave popcorn popper, BPA-free microwave popcorn popper, silicone popcorn popper. And so if every single, section of phrases is that same sort of core keyword that's being repeated over and over again, there's a good indication that you're wasting valuable space and that you're not creating as strong and impactful title as you could be. So really considering, it's not that somebody's slowly going through your title. They need to be able to quickly look at it and understand what your product is. So making sure that it's easy to grasp, even breaking up the title into sections will be a really helpful way to make the information in more bite-sized pieces.
Okay, how do you divide the title into section, like through dashes? What's your way?
Our personal strategy is to use N dashes, which is that medium length dash. So it's a little bit longer than the singular dash or hyphen. And it just helps create a little bit more of that visual separation. So it's clearer then to understand, okay, this section is about this detail. This section is about this detail. And so as I'm quickly skimming, it allows me to be able to hone in on the information that's most relevant to me more easily.
Okay, I understand. I'm curious to ask you about what's your take on A/B testing titles, because most people have this fear of changing the title because it's gonna re-rank everything. Anyway, give some signal to the algorithm that something changed. But I see some people doing that, like changing titles often to test them and see which one converts better. Even Amazon has that as a feature in their A/B testing, and some other people are, they just set the first one right at the beginning and just never change it. So what's your take on that?
I would strongly advocate for A/B testing, especially since you can do it directly through Amazon, because there might be all sorts of things that you thought that somebody was most cared about this element. But then as you're selling your product, you learn that, in fact, the majority of people are buying it because of this other thing. So if you're getting that input from your customers, then you would want to make sure that your listing in turn reflects that additional information that you have, because otherwise you might be missing out on people that wouldn't even click in because they're not seeing that information from the title. Additionally, it's important to understand that markets are not static. So, even the keywords that people are searching may evolve over time. I think a really great example to look at for that is something like the keto diet. So a few years ago, nobody knew what the keto diet was. Like if you would have said that, people would be like, what are you talking about? At that time, it was more, the paleo diet or Whole30, those types of diets were really the fad. And so if you were wanting to sell keto products, because there was still a small community of people that were starting to get really into it at that time, if you were only selling your products as keto related products, you would have really limited search volume and you would be selling to a really, really small sector of people. But if you were to expand that out and include low carb and paleo and some of those other types of terms, then you'd be able to broaden your reach to more people that would also be interested in your products. Well, fast forward to now when the keto diet is far more popular and there's so much more nuance to the types of terms that people are searching, the paleo diet isn't super relevant anymore. And so instead of needing to find all of these other ways to get in front of your customers, you can actually be far more specific to say, high fat MCT oil, collagen, peptides, protein mix or whatever. I mean, I don't know if that's actually a product, but I would imagine that might even be a search term today that wouldn't have existed a few years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense. So we should strive for relevancy. So we should really get to the terms that are most relevant, not just trying to fishing everywhere because it's going to dilute our conversion rate if people clicks and thinking it's something else and then it's not and they just leave. So they dilute the conversion rate. Yeah, that's a good tip to know. And one more question that I come up with, because the title, it's really one of the most important parts for ranking, especially, is that you mentioned sometimes in desktop or in mobile, the title gets truncated, right? So we have a shorter version of that. So what's your take on the order of the keywords? Does that matter? Like if you put your main keyword right at the beginning, is it better than in the end? Or because I'm thinking, if the title it gets truncated, you could put some keywords like right in the end. So it will give you some like ranking power, right? But it's not going to take out space from people to see the relevant information. So what's your take on that?
That's a great question. I would say that there's a lot to that. And one of the main things to be considering is what is the most competitive, like where you can be the most competitive keyword that's also the most highly relevant. And that keyword is something that should actually be very fitting for the beginning of your title because it's going to be a really clear description of what your product is. So if we go back to a popcorn popper example, like I've been talking about, and yours is a silicone BPA-free microwavable popcorn popper, put that at the beginning. That is describing your product really, really clearly. If it has that search volume there because you've done your research, then it's not taking away from everything. So you're getting the impact of the SEO, but you're also at the same time getting the impact of the customer being able to see that and recognize that this product is a good fit for what they're searching for.
Okay, sure. So you're suggesting, can we stuff a little bit of keyword maybe at the end of the title, which is the part that probably many people will not see, or we still need to keep that title clear and clean?
I would still keep it clear and clean. There's a way that you can, by breaking your title up into phrases, it will allow you to include more keyword phrases in a way that won't take away from the readability. Because if you're thinking about it, the customer's on Amazon, and yes, they might be going elsewhere to research, but they're only going to do that if they're really bought into what you're doing. And any little sort of red flag that you might be questionable quality or, some brand that's just kind of trying to convince you to buy a piece of garbage, that's going to make a customer feel less interested in your product and more likely to click into one of your competitors instead. And so you want to make sure that every single piece of the listing that's going to be visible to the customer, because even if it's truncated on the search results page, it might not be sometimes it's also truncated on the search results page, but a lot of times it isn't. So if the customer is going to see it, you still want to make sure that it's something that's going to be professional, that's going to be readable, and that's not going to set off any alarm bells.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so enough about titles. Let's go to the next two steps, which are about images and A+ content. So that's the visual part of our listing. So what are your suggestions to optimize those?
So we've got ahead of ourselves. We have the feature bullets first.
Okay.
And I do want to take
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So the feature bullets, what's really important about those is that's where when a customer clicks into your listing, they have a sense that your product is a good fit for their needs. But the feature bullets are where they confirm that. So every single person, when they're buying something, they have a set of criteria that they're using in order to determine if a product is a good fit or not. And so the feature bullets are a really important way for you to communicate those key details so that a customer can feel confident that they're not just going to waste a bunch of time scrolling through your listing to figure out if it's a good fit or not. So you really need to be considering what that buying criteria is, and then identify 5 key themes for your bullets and have each one of those focus points be what your bullet is about, and not sort of splitting it up. So the first part of the bullet is about one thing and the second part of the bullet is about another. And another really important tool that you can use to make that that sort of process for the customer easier is to use headers for your bullets. And it used to be that everybody was using all caps headers for their bullets, which we know that that is against Amazon's terms of service. And so a way around that is to use title case followed by an end dash, that medium length dash, to give the same effect of indicating this bullet is about this bullet is about that. And so that a customer, even if, the third bullet is what they really care about, they can find that really easily without needing to put too much effort into determining, okay, yes, this is BPA free, or okay, yes, this is microwave safe.
Okay, makes sense. And by the way, I would like to remember people who are listening that as in every episode, we have always the complementary material that goes with it. So Emma is sharing with us this listing analysis process that you can find, in the show notes. You will find the link to download that, or in the description in the YouTube video. So make sure that you go there and download this file. It's basically a report, a checklist of questions that will empower you to understand which are really the weaknesses of your listing and which direction you should take for each part of the listing in order to improve it. So this is actually the steps that we're talking about. You can find more information in this report by downloading it in the show notes. So now let's go to the next steps, which are the images and the A+ content, right? So what are your suggestions to optimize those?
Perfect. Yeah. And one other point I'd mention when you're following this process and using this download that we're discussing is to use all of these questions as a jumping off point. So the more curious that you can get, the more you can really keep your customer avatar in mind, the more effective this process is going to be. So it really is meant to stimulate your curiosity and to get you looking critically both at your own products as well as all of the other ones out there, because it's really easy to kind of, especially if you've been selling a product for a while, to make a lot of assumptions that, oh yeah, well, that's obvious. Maybe it's obvious to you, but it might not be obvious to your customer. Or you think that this is really, really important, but actually it's not something that customers would care about that much at this particular point in time. And so getting yourself out of that frame of mind, so kind of trying to pull yourself away from being the manufacturer and the business owner and really putting yourself in the place of the customer will allow this to be a much more effective process, which might also be why if you have the ability to have someone else do this, then you might get some really enlightening information that you wouldn't have been able to come up with independently. So talking about product, did you have something?
No, I was saying yes, for sure. I agree. You can go on. Yeah.
So product images, these are, some people are more visual shoppers. Some people are really go straight to the text. And a lot of people are a combination of the two, either because of the type of product it is or because of their nature as the customer. And so even basic things like, are you using all of the images that you're allowed to have? It's so common that I'll go to a product page and there will be 3 or 4 photos and you have space for more images. And so if you know that people are going to fall into that category of wanting that information, then take the time and effort to make sure that you're having a full portfolio of photos to help people really understand your product fully. And so some of those products are going to be more functional based, especially because there are certain details that like size and whatnot that are much easier to grasp in a picture form versus just reading it. But another really critical piece that even huge big brands miss out on is the lifestyle images. And those lifestyle images are so valuable because they really help the customer begin to make that transition from looking at the product as a separate thing to thinking about themselves using the product. And so considering what is the application in the broader world, how are people interacting with this, and trying to incorporate photos of this product in action, not just in a studio with a white background. Of course, that can be valuable as well, but without having those lifestyle photos, you're really missing out on a critical tool to be able to engage more emotionally with the customer, which is ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the big drivers for the decisions that we make as people. Are your images high quality? Again, it sounds relatively basic, but so many photos, they're either the resolution is poor, and so when they're on a big screen, they look grainy and pixelated, or they're just not edited well. And so they look really obviously photoshopped in a way that's going to have the adverse effect that you want it to have. So again, it's making sure, like, are you creating a positive impression with the customer? Is this something that they're going to be able to trust bringing into their household? Those are really important things that you need to be considering. And then all of that information that you're including in the bullets. So what are the main benefits of your product? What are really important features to understand? Have those reflected and emphasized in the photos as well. So your photos can be a great way to kind of take the information in your bullets or your A+ content and then reinforce it, but also add that visual element that will make it so much stronger. So that whether someone's looking at just your photos, whether they're looking at just the copy or a combination of the two, they're going to have the information that they need, but they're also going to be able to feel excited and get eager to buy the product.
Okay, nice. Definitely, those are nice tips, and many of those are, sometimes people can think it's common sense, but it's not common practice. So many people are not actually applying the common sense things that are suggested by all the experts, but those are really the ones that work, and most of the times they are not using those basic things, right? So now I'd like to understand better, like, the last step. It's about honing the marketing message. I think that's something important that not many people are actually taking into consideration. So what is that? What are the best practices you recommend following to get our marketing message right?
Yeah, and I think before we get to that, you mentioned that people understand this on some level, but then actually executing on it is a different level. And I think it's so easy to make excuses like, oh, people don't really read, or, oh, they're not going to spend that much time looking at my photos, so I can just go the cheapest route and have a poorly photoshopped image there. And it doesn't really matter. And you're doing yourself such a huge disservice by having that mindset, because you've invested so much time and resources into developing this product, into manufacturing it, into getting it to the Amazon warehouses if you're having them fulfill it, and then to just kind of flake on the last moment and say this doesn't really matter And this is actually the one piece you have to make that connection with the customer and to actually get them to buy it. So all of that effort is going to be wasted if you then sort of don't fully commit to making a really standout product page. So it's so important to be thoughtful about this, to make sure that you're also staying up to date, like the A+ content, what people were doing and how you were able to use the modules. That looked really different 2 years ago, 3 years ago, compared to what people are doing now and what modules exist and how you can use those in really innovative and skillful ways. And so also making sure that you're staying up to date. And let's not forget that if you become the category leader because you're doing all of this right, then you might need to continue innovating purely because everyone else starts copying you and you lose the thing that's making you special and different. So just some points that I think are so vital to be considering when you are putting together a product page or optimizing it. It is a process that never stops.
Absolutely.
So marketing, writing, sort of like, this is when we're getting a little bit more into the nitpicky things. We talked a lot about, are your characters within these limits and keywords and all of that stuff. But this step is really about, how does your listing function as a strong piece of marketing writing? And so getting into some of those details that can be a little bit more complicated if you do not have a lot of experience doing marketing writing. And so by actually going through some of these questions, it will strengthen your ability to execute on these more effectively, because being able to look at something critically and say, this is missing, or this is not clearly articulated, will help you get a better sense of what you need to do next. So you're not just sort of starting with a blank page. So things like, are you making claims that are too good to be true? It is so tempting to want to sell to everybody and to get people excited about your product. And there's that fine line that you can cross that turns into, we're the most innovative XYZ. And that's a really dangerous territory that you're falling into, because the last thing you want is to set the customer's expectations here, when really your product is here. And that gap there, the bigger it is, the more problems you're going to create, the more opening you're going to have for negative reviews, unhappy customers, returns. And so that's a really expensive sort of mistake to make that can have a lot of negative consequences on your business. So it's better to be direct and clear, even if your product has certain shortcomings. Allow the customer to know that on the front end so that they're not surprised by it when they get it home. Is your tone consistent and cohesive? So that's another thing that might sound like, whoa, what are you even talking about there? Like, what is tone? And tone is really sort of the voice and the way that you are communicating with your words. So is the tone something that's really excited and lighthearted, or is it something that's more serious and factual? And that's going to change how customers are perceiving your brand. So again, going back to that customer avatar idea, who are your customers and how can you use language on that tonal level to really create a conversation? Because even if it's just a product page that somebody's reading, an effective product page is essentially a conversation where the customer reads it and then sort of responds back in their minds and is continuing to really engage with the product page, not just sort of treat it as a separate thing. Little details like grammar, spelling, so important. If you're not a native English speaker, please take the time to find somebody that it can, at the very least, can just read it and give you some feedback, because everything from grammatical errors and misspellings, yes, those are problems, but just as problematic can be turns of phrase or expressions that might not directly translate, that can make your text very awkward to read and can again be that off-putting red flag type of situation. Like poor photos can be where customers like, I don't know if I trust this company after all. And I mean, do you want me to just continue going through all of these points, or were there specific things that really caught your eye that you wanted to spend some time discussing?
I think you gave a lot of interesting points here, and I think people, because we want to respect people's time here, they can actually go deeper in these points here when they download the file that you shared. So definitely, I encourage everyone to go deeper into this topic through that. You gave a few very interesting tips, and I think all of them, most of them at least, goes back to have a very good understanding of who your customer avatar is, right? So once you have that in place, then you can really think deeper into all these like branding features, like the tone of voice and all the other things you mentioned. So but before we close, I'd like you to talk a little bit about what are the common mistakes that you see people making in creating listings, so that we can help them avoid those mistakes.
Yeah, so we've already touched on a few sort of peripherally. I think one of the biggest mistakes that sellers make is really sort of treating the keywords as the only thing that matters and forgetting the importance of making sure that everything flows well. So we talked about that in the sense of the title, but the same really holds true for your bullets. And if your bullets are just a combination of a bunch of keywords, then they're not going to be serving their purpose of helping people identify if this product is a good fit for them as not. So as tempting as it is to want to keyword stuff, really making sure that you're showing some restraint, also with the understanding that you have other places you can put keywords, and that the Amazon algorithm is very sophisticated, and it's not only taking the keywords that are in your listing as ways of indexing and ranking your product, and that a lot of that is also going to be impacted by, are customers buying your product? Are they keeping your product? Are they happy with you as a seller? All of those different elements are impacting how you're going to be able to rank with your product. And so you don't want to be too blinded by the keywords and forgetting all of those other critical pieces. So if I had to say one, that is definitely the biggest and most common mistake that I see people make. I would say secondly is not having a good sense of organization, which might be a little bit surprising, but again, kind of understanding a customer is going to a product page and it's not that they have set aside an hour to read your product page from top to bottom. They have a lot going on, their phone's going off. They have a million things. They need to buy something. They don't want to make this an all day activity. And so making sure that you're allowing this to be as easy of a process as possible. And so organization is a big part of that. So, if a critical piece of information is at the end of the fourth bullet, then how many people are going to be able to find that easily? So with the bullets, it matters with your A+ content and your photos and even your title. The organizational element of that is so critical. And that sort of also speaks to the need to be able to take an editorial eye to things and say, okay, this is important, but not important enough to be here. And being able to make those kinds of judgment calls are going to serve you really, really well.
Awesome. Lots of very useful tips. Thank you, Emma, for sharing this with us. Lots of we got a value-packed episode here. Tell people how can they reach out to you and how can you help them?
Sure. So first of all, if a lot of this is too overwhelming to you, we do offer a free listing analysis, which you're not going to get a complete report of this whole entire process, but we will be sharing some of our top observations of things that you can do that are going to have the most immediate impact on the performance of your listing. And should you not want to implement those yourself, or you would just rather take this off of your task list because it's not in your realm of strong skill sets, then we're also happy to help with the listing writing as well. So our website is marketingbyemma.com. If you want that free analysis, it's marketingbyemma.com/free analysis. And on our page, you'll also be able to find contact details, whether you prefer to communicate via phone, WhatsApp, Facebook, it's all there.
Awesome. Yeah, great. Thank you, Emma. You will find, you will find everything that Emma just said in the description of the YouTube video, or in the show notes. You will find the download link to the report, the analysis process that Emma just shared with us. So guys, as I always remind you, the key to success is to emulate the best. So listen again once or twice to what Emma just shared. Go grab the listing process analysis from our website, and start implementing that in your business, because that's what it's going to give the most impact. Take action. Okay, guys. All right. So we got to the end. Thank you very much, Emma, for being here. I hope to see you again in another episode.
Thank you so much. This was great.